Whatever it takes, I know I can make it through. A Degrassi podcast with Kelsey and Holland too. I know I can make it through.
Hi, and welcome to Whatever It Takes, a podcast about Degrassi, the Next Generation. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Holland. And today we have a special episode for you guys. We actually got the opportunity to chat with Degrassi producer Stephen Stohn,
who you might know from all of the freeze frames.
or his name anyway.
Yeah.
He just had a new book that was released in March called Whatever It Takes, where he kind of documents his entire life in the entertainment business, basically, from when he graduated college and went on a European, or not even just European, excursion with his friend in a VW bus, all the way to becoming an entertainment lawyer, and all the way to becoming involved with Degrassi and the music scene in Canada. So I guess without further ado, here's our interview with Stephen Stohn. All right. Hello, everybody. We are here with Stephen Stohn, producer of Degrassi, writer of his new book, Whatever It Takes. Welcome to the show.
Well, and thank you for the plug on the book.
Of course.
We're big fans of the title, so.
Yes, obviously. And I guess we can start with the title of the book. It is obviously the name of the theme song that you wrote for Degrassi. And you talk about it a little bit in the book, but could you tell us a little bit about the writing process for the original theme song, or maybe a little bit the recording process for the song?
Did. And so the phrase, making it through actually held a special resonance to me. But when the actual writing of the song, there were three of us who were sitting in a studio, and my idea was actually something very different. I'm a real fan of Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys, and they did a song called Be True to Your School, at school, in the sunshine, in California, and so that's what I brought into the session. And we tried that, and we liked the idea of having a chorus behind it. But, my idea of a fun Beach Boys song wasn't really going anywhere. And I think it was Jody or one of the others. We just started to gradually get into the concept of, well, what are we trying to talk about in Degrassi? And that's when the title came up. And then the song kind of wrote itself. But, of course, we echoed that choir effect by having, way back in season 1, that children's choir in the background.
The classic, which is, I think it's me and Holland's favorite iteration of the song. But do you have a preference? Because it did evolve as the seasons went on. It gets a little bit different as it goes on.
I really like that one. And we did and you may know it, we did a 3-minute version of it where we added a middle part. A fellow writer and a rapper named Evren Ozdemir, wrote kind of a rap section to the song. And that actually went out on a recording. And I kind of liked that version. We made a joke about it because we called that version What Evren Takes.
Perfect. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if this was a rumor or if this got spun into my head, but did Alex Johnson of Instant Star record one version of the theme song?
Oh, yeah, it was several seasons. She did, and I think we used essentially the same version. I think it was about 3 seasons, maybe even 4 that she sang. We might have changed the back, the instrumentation just a tiny bit each time. But it was her vocal. I think 4 seasons.
Oh wow, yeah. I think on the show we go episode by episode and kind of talk about each episode, and I think we're in the Alex Johnson theme song years right now.
Yeah.
And speaking of songwriting, you talk a lot about the history of your kind of musical past, whether you were playing songs for a crowd of 3 on your excursions with Christopher Ward, or whether you're representing awesome people like Katie Lang or the Cowboy Junkies. So I wanted to know if your kind of past in the music world had an influence on how many bands were actually featured in the show of Degrassi.
Well, no, absolutely. And I will say, in producing the show, Linda is very involved with the writer. She doesn't actually write anything, so to speak, but they pitch her storyline, she reacts, and then I don't generally even read scripts unless there's a problem and Linda comes to me and says, wants some objective outside advice. I don't get too involved in the individual scripts. Yes, the arcing for the season we talk about and where we're going to go, that's a large topic of conversation. But the individual scripts, generally, if things are going well, the first time that I'll hear it is actually at the read-through, about 4 weeks before we go to camera. And most of the time after the read-through, just the writers and I and Linda, maybe the director, will sit down and everybody looks at me because I'm sort of the fresh ears, the fresh eyes. And most of the time I'm able to say, oh, you're doing fantastic. I try and keep my comments limited to, 3 or 4 comments. Here's where I lost attention. Here's, I was confused at this point, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But you've done a great job, carry on. Sometimes I'll say, oh dear, I think we need a page 1 rewrite, and here's why. And, I'm not engaging with the characters. I just don't believe what's going on. And people really listen to me then because, generally I don't say that. But it's amazing what they can do. Okay, I've gotten way off track in talking about that's just to say that on that side of the creative, I'm not, I have a role, but it's not a day-to-day role. On the music, I love getting involved right down into the weeds, day in and day out. And whenever there's music in a show, even if it's just, one of the kids playing something, or if we're going to select music, we have a meeting to discuss it, probably about 6 weeks in advance. Are we going to try and get a special song? Are we going to write something? Then as the rough cut comes in and the fine cut for the show, that's when we start to really get down to the nitty gritty of trying to figure out where we need composed music, where we need outside music. And very importantly, by the way, I'm fond of the saying, no score is score. In other words, not having music is sometimes music in and of itself, because just having silence in the background can sometimes really make some dialogue pop, and then going on through the entire sound mixing process. So yes, I'm very involved in that side of the show making.
Do you have a personal favorite Degrassi band that has appeared on the show, whether it be Downtown Sasquatch,
Studs,
Janie and the Studs featuring Peter Stone,
Janie and the Studs featuring Peter Stone, PMS. We're just coming up to where Maya is joining Mo's band, so we don't know anything about them really yet, except for that Maya's like kind of a badass with the string instrument. Yes. But do you have a favorite band?
Well, no, I have to admit, Studs is not one of my necessarily all-time now, but we did we not? Also, as I started to say this, you may correct me. I'm pretty sure we used a Studs version of the theme.
Oh, yes, you did. You definitely did.
And maybe for a couple of seasons. And yeah, that wasn't a bad version. I really liked the Alex Johnson version. The Studs version, that was up-tempo and rocking. The band I loved way back in the day was Hell Hath No Fury.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yes, when they came out with their Anti-Craig T-shirts and all that. Yeah, that was kind of cool. They weren't on for a long time, but it was for a good time.
Yeah, we actually also wanted to ask you who you thought the true winner of the Battle of the Bands in Rock and Roll High School was, because we always thought that it should have been Hell Hath No Fury, but maybe that answered the question.
Oh, absolutely.
I still to this day wish that I owned a Hell Hath No Fury Flaming Craig t-shirt.
Actually, in our logo, one of our listeners commissioned some art of us. That's our logo now. And in it, my cartoon version is wearing a Hell Hath No Fury shirt.
Good for you.
Mine is wearing a Degrassi drama shirt, which I think is equally appropriate.
Yes.
Well, that's good. That's one that I could wear.
Perfect. And we also have a segment on our podcast where we discuss the title of the episode each time, because more often than not, it is named after a song. And originally in Next Generation, it seemed like they were exclusively 80s songs. And we were kind of wondering how the naming convention started, or was it an homage to the fact that the original series ran in the 80s? Do you know? Can you offer any insights into that?
Yeah, it was the writers, and I'm not sure which writer actually started it, but it just became a thing, and it became part of the pitch. When the story is pitched to Linda, it would generally have the title, and there would be like a beat. We call it a beat sheet, which is a one-page description of what's going to be in the episode. And even at that early stage of the script, they would suggest, and it's sort of, when you're trying to come up with titles, it's sometimes really difficult. Whereas if you say, songs of the 80s, I really like such and such, but that doesn't really go with it. And then you sort of think about it. It's kind of a fun game to play to come up with the title.
Right.
I'm sorry that we don't carry on doing it. The hashtag it was sort of cool at the time, I think, but it's maybe had its day.
Well, it's a different kind of generation within the Next Generation, I guess. So it made sense at the time. We haven't actually gotten to the hashtag episodes yet.
Yeah, we haven't started. We watched the reunion episode of Next Class, but since we are going in order and we do 2 a week, we are now up to season 12.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we're moving along, but we're not quite there yet.
Do you?
Are you like once a week? So you'll be in about 40 weeks. You'll be getting into the meat of Next Class.
Oh, we do 2 a week.
Yep. So possibly sooner. I haven't done the math yet. We're just kind of trucking along.
Yeah. It's been quite a journey. Do you have a favorite episode title, or whether like the title fit perfectly with what happened, or you're just really stoked about a specific song you really like making it as a title?
No, I mean my favorite episode. I mean, it's like having children.
Right.
You must love all episodes equally. Having said that. And I was saying this to somebody else about a month ago, because they'd asked, well, what's your favorite episode? And I always mention episode number 1, because, this is of the Next Generation. It was really fantastic. Then over the first 2 seasons, we had some episodes that we look back at and either laugh or cringe, depending on your point of view.
Oh my gosh.
Toby doing laxatives, and there was one,
Right.
and there was one where Liberty was wearing a cape, which are not highlights. Let's put it that way. Definitely, and in the book I write a lot about the Time Stand Still episode, and I think that a combination of a title and an episode, that's pretty perfect. Because you can imagine that moment as the gun goes up. There are many moments that you could imagine, but in that moment, truly that iconic shot where you see Rick,
Mm-hmm.
and Jimmy, running away, and the shot
Totally.
is fired. I mean,
And
truly,
when
time does stand still.
We did actually, as we were growing up when the original first few seasons of Next Generation were airing, we definitely watched them in real time. I think we were both in middle school when that episode came out, and I definitely have a vivid memory of watching that and being just on the edge of my seat. And we talked about it on our episode recap, how Jimmy's like curdling scream still like
Oh, it haunts. I just got full body chills. You just saying it.
It's one of the most